Okay guys, now here's my Colt Reissue 1851, and we cured the problem in the last video of it was dragging on the cylinder. I'll put a link so that you can see where we fix that here. Okay, now we're going to progress to the next part. Now this has been sealed up ever since it left the factory. I can look at the screws and tell they have never been touched. There's no warping, no nothing. These are absolutely clean and pristine. So this is the way that this gun left the factory. Now I want to break it down and look for burrs and things like that. So I have a set of proper screwdrivers. These are not expensive. If you're going to be working around guns, I recommend you get one of these. And I have the correct size flat tip straight screwdriver tip in it in order to retrieve it. Now I've already broken down multiple times the cylinder and etc. and got the clearance here, so now she clears nice and easy and rotates. So now we go to the part of where we're going to work on the action. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to push out the key. I've got something non-marring that's not going to hurt nothing. I'm going to pop out, put it to half cock, use the ramrod, give it a little jiggle, make sure the key's completely out of the way. And as I pointed out in earlier videos, this Colt is proper, unlike most of the reproductions. That key is captured. That's what that screw right there on top of the wedge does. It keeps that wedge locked in place. Now I'm going to use the lid down in here for putting my screws so I don't lose anything. Alright, so my cylinder is off, my barrel is off. I'm going to start my breakdown procedure. I'm going to go to the little screw down here, and I'm going to back it off about 3 turns. Yeah, they're nice and tight, so they're still sealed. That'll form a little bit of gap right there, and that will take the pressure off. Then I'm going to go to the back strap top, and I'm going to remove these screws here. Now these screws are the same size as far as these and the other trigger guard screws. There's the 2 that are not. That one and the one in the front of the trigger guard is not. But these 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 are interchangeable. Nice and tight, just like the factory left. I've been told they had a little adhesive of some kind. It was not truly, like Loctite, but every one of them I've ever done, it's that way. It's, you go to break it loose and it's like you got to overcome something. So I figure it's some sort of mild adhesive. I was told by a gunsmith years ago, he said they'd take all the screws and there was a sponge that you set all the screws in, and the sponge had this stuff in it. So you could just pull it out and put it in place. That way you knew if you got all your screws because they were in order. If you missed one, it'd be kind of obvious. Now I'll shift back to the base and I'll remove that base screw right there. And I'm going to now remove the grips, wiggle, wiggle, gently pull it apart, just like that. Okay, wood's completely unfinished on the inside. I'll need to seal that up. End grain completely unfinished. Ease the grip strap out. You can see it's brass on the inside. It's only nickel plate on the surface. And that's typical. Number matching to the gun, but it's completely unfinished. So I want to take a little bit of finish and put in there myself to seal that against moisture getting in when I carry this in the field. Okay, now I'm going to take that little screw that started out, I'm going to put it right back in the grip down here at the base to keep it from getting separated. Okay, now I'm going to go in front of the trigger guard to the first screw up here. I'm going to take about 3 turns on it, stop, go to the grip strap right here, take about 2 turns on it, and then I'm going to go to the mainspring. I'm I'm going to hold the mainspring with my hand, not compressing it, just holding it. And I'm going to unscrew it very slowly because it's under tension. A few turns like that, and that takes the tension off of that spring. I don't want anything bending when I'm trying to take it apart here, see? Now I can go ahead and take these out. Sometimes they want to come out by themselves, sometimes you got to lift them off. That's good and tight. And she broke loose. Now if you get this out of sequence, it's alright, but what you're trying to avoid is this. You don't want the trigger guard to be wedged by doing this. Push them up. Right there. Okay. What that means is, since the mainspring is under tension, if you don't take it out, it starts pushing and wanting to pry the trigger guard off. That puts a lot of stress here and wants to bend the thin frames. A lot of times these are brass, and you don't want it to start bending it there. So therefore, loosen up the tension on the mainspring. Now the mainspring, I'm going to just finish unscrewing it. Lay that to the side, put that screw that holds the mainspring back into its place, just like that. Okay. Don't see any big babs. You can see where the finish is not good underneath. It's flaking off in places, and that's typical. Okay. Now I'm going to take that little screw that came from the front of the trigger guard and put it back there so I don't misplace it. Now looking inside the frame, I don't see any wire casting. I notice that the color case is all the way on the other side of the frame. I have seen them where, not on a Colt, but on reproductions. I have seen it where this color case will be just lined where they just apply a finish to make it, and it's not actually true case. Okay. Now we're going to take out the screw that holds the bolt spring and the trigger spring. Bear straight down, keep tension, don't let it twist out, let it unscrew. Screws are fairly soft on reproduction, so always hold good firm downward pressure and don't let it buck out but actually turn. Okay. There's the screw and there's the spring. Now we're going to take the bottom screw, which is the trigger screw, next. Bear down, slowly apply tension, don't let it twist out so you don't bugger up the screws till it breaks loose like that. If you can't get it, if it wants to roll out, don't keep grabbing and popping loose. Get something where you can get enough pressure on it and hold it, or a better fitting screwdriver. Once you get these screws buggered up, you're kind of in a pickle. You might as well get new ones because it's a lot of work. You can do it. You can, if it's an antique or something, you can actually pin them back and etc. But for the price of reproduction screws, they're cheap. You get a whole new set, and a lot of times the reproductions are better than the originals. Okay, there's the bolt, there's the trigger. Now we go for the hammer screw. Okay, that's tight. Put it down where I can get some pressure straight down on it. There it goes. Okay, move that screw. Now the hammer comes out the bottom of the action. Be careful not to let the hand go flying off into nowhere, because the hand sits on the hammer and it's just a peg. Okay? Alright, that's complete disassembly. Now we start looking inside. I'm looking for the opening where the bolt goes through and comes through here. I'm going to make sure that that doesn't have a big old burr. It's common, and there is one right there in the corner. Next, I want to look, getting good light, and I want to look down this slot right here where the hand rides for this opening that comes out into the race, and that's for the hand work. That is kind of blind milled, and a lot of times it's got burrs, and I can clearly see on the inside I got several big burrs on the inside, so I'm going to have to file that smooth. I want to look at the screw threads right here in the frame where the big screw that holds the spring, a lot of times, and this one does, it has a raised burr. The way that they thread that is from the top, and it raises a burr on the bottom. So I want to get rid of that because that wire edge can cause my spring to fail by cutting my spring. It's a sharp edge on it. You do not want any sharp edges on any kind of spring. And then right here in the frame, on the edge of the thing, on the side right here, it's very sharp. There's a wire burr right there pretty good. I'll have to stone that out. Okay, now let's look at the hammer. There's a little roller in the back of the hammer back here. Roll it with your thumb, make sure it works. A lot of times those are jammed tight and it causes friction. Look at the actual notches in the hammer. Make sure they're not burred, and this was in good shape here. This is lobe on the side right there. That is what interacts with the bolt together, and that's what causes it to, when you cock the hammer back, it grabs it and tips it down like a seesaw, and then it pops underneath it, so that when the hammer goes, it snaps back over it so it tips up. Make sure that's not burred up, and it seems okay on this one. Nice color case on this one. Alright, now looking at the bolt itself, the edge, make sure there's no on the sides of it wire edge. This one's got a little bit, and I'll address that. Make sure where the two hooks are back here that engage the hammer, make sure there ain't a big burr or something there. That's very common. And also make sure the sides are flush. Sometimes when they punch that hole for the screw to go through it in the manufacturing, it rises a burr. Trigger. Front where the spring hooks, make sure there's not some wiry burr there. And this is the sear, that ear coming up. That's what engages the actual notches in the hammer. For your half cock, which you probably can't see, is deeply cut right there, and then a shallow one. The first one is the what they call the safety notch or the loading notch, and you see how far up it goes up in there. And then the full cock is that little short one right after it, and that's easier to fire off of. Okay. The hand. The most common problem I have with hands is right here on the top where it engages the back of the cylinder will have a bad burr. And this one's got a pretty good one right there. I'm going to have to stone that smooth to get that better. But it's been fitted well, and this is a little higher quality. The actual peg that comes through has been staked on this one. So that's actually a step up from what I'm used to seeing in these parts. Yeah, this is rather nice the way they've done this one. Definitely. Spring. Now this one is the type that has the split going all the way through to the hole. That's a real improvement. Now, as a contrast, let me show you one that I broke on my Pieta reproduction. You see how it's solid where the coat one is actually split right there. That will allow the coat one to work a lot better than it. You see how that one snapped off, but that's going to give that a better lifespan. And that's all the parts. Okay, now all I'm going to do is go through, inspect every little hole, every little opening, and deburr it, make it smooth, make it function. Now I've already done that in a video. I'm not going to do it in this video because it's exactly the same function that I've done in previous videos. So I'm going to give you a link here back to my playlist. Look on those on doing the action on my 61 Navy, my Pieta 61 Navy, and it'll be exactly the same process I'm going to do on this. I am not going to cut the hammer notch just yet. I'm going to take it out and shoot it first with it as stock, and we're going to talk about why Colt left it sighted so high. But we'll get to that in the next video. Now, for assembly, reverse order it. Here's how we're going to assemble it. We're going to take the frame, we're going to hold it in our hand facing in this direction. We're going to take the hand, we're going to set it in that hole in the hammer. We're going to bring it up here and we're going to gently compress and fit that spring up in that hole, that raceway, and then kind of line it all up so that the hammer and all go together. Then we're going to take and kind of wiggle a little, and you'll feel it pop in to where it lines up for our big hammer screw. Put that in, start it, run her down where she's snug but not blood tight. Okay, now check for function. Look in the little window, make sure the hand's coming up, and it is. Okay, now we're going to take the bolt. Okay, you're going to take it, and you're going to take the two ears up here on the top, little bunny rabbit ears. You're going to hold it like this, and you're going to take it and gently put it in so that those ears go between the side of the hammer and the frame. There's a slot there. That's where you go in. You put them in first, and then you cam it into place like that. Now, looking in the top hole up here, you can tip the hammer back. You're going to lift it up until it lines up. Now take one of your action screws, go through the hole to the far side, and again start it, snug it, but don't blood tight it. Okay? Now gently work the action. Take your finger and come on the inside and push on the bolt so you're acting like the spring. Make sure it's lift up, drop, lift up, drop. That's correct. Now we're going to take the trigger. Between the bolt body and the face of the hammer, we're going to take the trigger. We're going to take that point and we're going to stick it in first right by the action screw and let it slide backwards so it's just like this, in and then back. Okay? And now you take your next action screw and put it in there. So again, making sure you can see that, we take it, we slide it in and back so it lines up. Then you drop in your action screw like that. Snug it up. Okay, now that all these screws are in place, now we're going to snug them up. So I'm going to go back to the hammer first. I'm going to go then to the bolt. Snug it. Then I'm going to do the trigger. Snug it. Take my finger in there like I did before. Click, click. Holes, pull the trigger down. Now, taking that big flathead screw, I'm going to take my spring, drop it in place, making sure that the long end come on boy, work me. Okay. The long end is what's going on to the trigger. The short end is going to lay on the bolt. You want this spring curved down. Notice there's a curve up, curve down. We want the curve down. We hold the action in our hand like this, and we're going to take that long piece, we're going to put it against the trigger. There's a little shelf on the front of the trigger. That's what we're going to go into. Don't stick it under that shelf. Some people will stab it underneath that shelf, and the trigger will never work because it's not hooked by the spring. Okay? Now we put in the big screw that's going to hold it. Now, don't take this screw blood tight. Snug it up, just snug, and then work the action. Gently pull back the hammer. Click, click, full cock. Hammer doesn't go forward, lightly pull the trigger, but over tightening that screw is one of the biggest things that breaks this. It's supposed to have a little bit of play. So just snug it down good. Don't blood tight that screw. Okay? Now, we're going to go back to the trigger guard. So I'm going to take that front screw out of the frame. I'm going to set the trigger guard in place, and I'm going to look to the front hole, and that's where I'm going to put the first screw. Just going to snug it up with my fingers. Yes, I know the mainspring's not on. We'll get to that in a minute. I want to just loosely get it in there, about halfway down. Like that. Okay? And we'll take one of my action screws, drop in there. Same thing, about halfway down. Next action screw, trigger guard screw should say. Halfway down. Now that leaves a little bit of a gap, and that's what I want. Now I'm going to take the screw that holds the mainspring loose. I want to make sure my mainspring is smooth all the way around. Where this was punched when it was hot, the main hole in the bottom, I want to make sure that's smooth. I don't want any wire edge. If there's a wire edge, you can file it a little bit to get rid of the wire edge. Especially up here at the top on the cheap reproductions. And this one's been well fitted. But a lot of the cheap reproductions up here, this likes to be sharp, and that's going to fail the spring. I'm going to take the spring and set it not in correct position, see, off to the side, and I'm simply going to put that screw and get it started. Just like this. Sometimes it's a bit fiddly. This one is. It's a straight up, straight shot. It don't allow no play. Alright, I got it in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm going to rotate it under. Take my thumb and put it in place to make sure it locks under the hammer, which it does right there. Now I'm going to tighten that up till it just snugs up good. Okay? Just like that. Now I go back to the trigger guard screws right here, and I'm going to torque them take them down snug. Put a little torque on it. Torque on it. Go to my front one. There. Go back and double check them, because this trigger guards can bind. That's the reason you want to go and double check it. Make sure it locks in just a second. There we go. Now I come back here and I will fully tighten down the mainspring. And that will tension the mainspring. I want it to just snug up, not blood tight. Now, look visually and make sure that little roller is in its little track in the top of that spring. Okay? Make sure that the spring is correct left to right. Okay? Now, gently pull it back. First click. Full cock. Holding the hammer, let it off. So, 1, 2, all the way down. Now let's talk about the clicks. First, I pull back. You can look right there and see, I hope you can, let me find the right angle here. Right there. The bolt right there sticking up. Okay? When I pull it back the first click, it should disappear down in the hole. And it did. When I pull back a little bit more, it should pop up. And that's the bolt popping up to lock. So, pull back. That click is not the hammer grabbing, it's that popping up. Now go back, and now I'm in full cock. So it should be 4 clicks. Okay. There it is, 4 clicks. They used to say it was C-O-L-T, colt. Okay. Now, it's completely together there. Now I'm going to take out the screw that goes on the bottom. I'm going to take my grips and refit them, gently slide them in. Don't bind this up, this can chip the wood. Just lightly slide it in, and it should be a little bit of a friction fit top to bottom. Make sure it's flush up here. Alright. Now I'm going to sit the action in and rotate to right there. Now to make sure that everything's going to line up, I'm going to go push so the grip slid a little too far down. There's a gap down here about the size of a, pretty good gap right there. Now when I put it up against there, I know I'm too low. I can look in the hole and see the screw, and taking my thumb and on top of the hammer, slide it to where they line up. Just like that. Alright, now I'm looking through the hole at where those screws go. I'm going to take them in and just start them, nothing else. There's a little bit of a torque that happens in the trigger guard, the back strap between the top and the bottom. Now turning it over, looking in this hole, I want to kind of push the grip away until that hole lines up, and I can look straight down the hole. Now I take my screw and drop it into there. That one I'm going to run down about halfway. Alright, now I go back to the top of the back strap, and I'll go ahead and tighten these down. Then turn around to that screw on the bottom and take it down snug. That should eliminate that gap right there on the grip. Now that I've done that, go back and just witness test every one to make sure you did get them. That actually went up just a little bit right there. There. Now, check the action. Okay. Bring back the half cock. Reinsert the cylinder. Take and put on the barrel assembly. Push in the wedge. Make sure it just locks over. Make sure it freely rotates. Bring the hammer to full cock. Let it all the way down. Cock it very slowly. Cylinder's locked, hammer's in good place, everything feels good. Cock it quick, cylinder's in right place, everything's done. And that is the assembly, disassembly of the Colt design. Now this would be true of the smaller ones and the larger ones. The only big difference is when you're talking about the Walker and the first model, it has a V mainspring, which is different from the flat mainsprings of all the others. Other than that, that's how you break down the Colt. Now, of course, you've got the screw up here that takes the loading lever out. I didn't go into that. But that's the basis of how to break down the Colt system for inspection, cleaning, etc. And at the end of this video, I'll put the link back to my playlist for you guys. If you want to see how to tune the action and etc. of sighting in and all those other videos, please check out my playlist. Thank you for watching, guys. Safe journeys to you.